The cold burgundy wine dripped from my chin, staining my favorite cream silk blouse and splashing onto the roasted turkey. Complete silence fell over the dining room. My 8-year-old grandson dropped his fork. My daughter, Sarah, half stood from her chair, her eyes wide with disbelief. Sitting across from me, my daughter-in-law, Rebecca, stood clutching the stem of her empty wine glass. Her chest heaved, her face flushed with entitlement and rage. "You ruined everything," Rebecca shrieked, her voice echoing off the high ceilings of my home. The trigger for this outburst was embarrassingly trivial. Just moments ago, Rebecca had enthusiastically announced to our extended family that they were taking a luxury ski trip to Aspen for Christmas, funded by the family account. The problem: that account was my personal savings. When I quietly mentioned I wouldn't be paying for an Aspen vacation this year, Rebecca snapped. 2 years of living rent-free in my house had convinced her my money was hers. My son, David, sat frozen next to her, staring at his plate. He didn't intervene. He never did. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my own drink back at her. Instead, I slowly picked up my linen napkin and dabbed the wine from my cheeks. I looked directly into Rebecca's furious eyes. I just smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a woman who had finally reached the end of her patience. I placed the stained napkin neatly on the table. "Excuse me," I murmured calmly to the guests. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor, and walked out of my own dining room. I didn't look back to see their reactions. The time for talking had passed. It was time to act. As I walked up the stairs, my mind was already organizing a very practical, quiet plan. Rebecca thought she had the upper hand. She was profoundly mistaken. My bedroom felt like a sanctuary, away from the chaos downstairs. I pulled my small leather suitcase from the closet and laid it on the bed. I didn't pack much, just enough clothes for a week, my essential toiletries, and my important financial folders from the desk drawer. Footsteps hurried heavily up the stairs. The bedroom door pushed open, and David stood there, looking miserable. He rubbed the back of his neck, refusing to meet my eyes. "Mom, look, she's just really stressed right now," David muttered, leaning against the door frame. "You embarrassed her in front of Aunt Clara and everyone. If you had just talked to us privately, David," I interrupted, zipping my suitcase shut. My voice remained entirely steady. "Your wife poured a glass of wine in my face at my dinner table. I know. I know. It was wrong. She'll apologize tomorrow when she calms down." I grabbed my purse and my car keys. I didn't need Rebecca's fake apologies. I needed peace, and I needed my home back. "Clean up the dining room," I instructed briefly as I walked past him. I carried my bag down the hallway. Sarah was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, her coat already on, clutching her own purse tightly. She looked at my suitcase and nodded in total understanding. Sarah had never liked the way David and Rebecca treated me, but she always respected my desire to keep the peace. "My car or yours?" "Mom," Sarah asked quietly. "Mine," I replied. We walked out the front door, leaving the murmur of confused relatives behind. I didn't tell David where I was going. I didn't owe him an explanation. The cold November air felt incredibly refreshing against my skin. As I started the engine of my sedan, I looked back at the large, beautifully lit house I had shared with my late husband. I was done being a guest in my own home. The next morning, I sat at Sarah's kitchen island with a hot cup of black coffee and my laptop open. The sunlight poured in, a stark contrast to the heavy atmosphere of my own house. Sarah sat across from me, quietly reading a book, offering her silent support. She didn't push me to talk. She just let me work. I logged into my primary bank account. For 2 years, I had allowed David and Rebecca to live with me under the guise of saving for their own place. I paid the mortgage, the property taxes, the utilities, and most of the groceries. I even gave David an authorized credit card on my account for household emergencies. I clicked on the credit card statement. The emergencies included a $300 charge at a luxury day spa, a $150 dinner at a steakhouse, and $400 for designer kids' clothes. My finger hovered over the mouse pad. I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt clear-headed. I clicked the Settings tab. Remove authorized user. Confirm. Lock card. Confirm. Next. I opened my auto insurance portal. David drove a large SUV that was registered in my name and fully paid off by my late husband. I navigated to the vehicle list, selected the SUV, and canceled the insurance coverage under my policy. If he wanted to drive it, he could pay for his own insurance. My phone vibrated on the counter. A text from David popped up on the screen. "Mom, my card just got declined at the grocery store. Did the bank freeze your account? Call me." I took a slow sip of my coffee. I didn't reply. I didn't need to explain myself. They were both fully employed adults making decent salaries. It was time they experienced the actual cost of living. Sarah glanced up from her book, noticing my faint smile. "Everything okay? Mom, everything." I closed the laptop. Is finally getting back on track. By noon, my phone had rung 5 times. Twice from David. 3 times from Rebecca. I ignored them all, letting them go straight to voicemail. I wasn't hiding. I simply had nothing to say to them. "Sarah," I asked, grabbing my coat from the hook by the door, "do you have time to take a quick drive with me? I have an errand to run at the house." "Of course." She grabbed her car keys instantly. We drove to my neighborhood, timing it perfectly. David and Rebecca were both at work, and the kids were at school. The driveway was empty except for the silver SUV David drove. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The house smelled faintly of stale wine and unwashed dishes. I walked straight to the living room cabinet and unplugged the main Wi-Fi router. I wrapped the power cord around it and slipped it neatly into my tote bag. I paid the internet bill, so the router belonged to me. Let them use their mobile data. Next. I went to the kitchen drawer where we kept the spare keys. I picked up the fob for the SUV. "What are you doing with that?" Sarah asked, watching from the hallway with an amused expression. "I'm taking my car back," I stated simply. I walked outside, unlocked the SUV, and climbed into the driver's seat. It was cluttered with Rebecca's empty coffee cups and the kids' toy wrappers. I started the engine. Sarah followed behind me in her car as I drove the SUV straight back to her driveway, parking it securely by the fence. I left a brief note on the kitchen counter before I left. Internet is disconnected. The SUV is with me. No threats, no arguments, just actions. As we sat back down in Sarah's kitchen, I felt a massive weight lifting off my shoulders. The fallout began at 5:30 p.m. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree. "Where is the router?" "The kids need to watch TV," Rebecca texted. "Mom, where's the SUV? How am I supposed to get to work tomorrow?" David chimed in a minute later. I typed out a single, precise response to a group text with both of them. "The router and the SUV belong to me. You both work. You can purchase your own internet plan and use your own vehicles. Do not contact me again today." 10 seconds later, Rebecca called. I tapped the red button, sending her directly to voicemail. I wasn't going to subject myself to her screaming. If she wanted to throw a tantrum, she could do it to an empty room. Sarah placed a plate of roasted chicken and vegetables in front of me. They're losing their minds, aren't they? They are realizing that their lifestyle was entirely funded by my generosity. I picked up my fork. A generosity that dried up the moment she threw a drink in my face. That evening, I sat in Sarah's quiet living room, looking at the photos on my phone, pictures of my house, my garden, the large kitchen I used to love cooking in. I realized I didn't miss it. The house was too big, too much to clean, and filled with the exhausting energy of two ungrateful adults. I didn't just want them out. I wanted a clean slate. I wanted a smaller place, a garden I could manage myself, and a front door that only opened for people who respected me. I opened my contact list and scrolled down to the letter H. I tapped the name Helen Vance, my friend and a very efficient real estate agent. Helen. I greeted her when she answered. I need to put the house on the market. At 10 o'clock the next morning, Helen and I pulled into my driveway. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. Helen right behind me with her clipboard and measuring tape. Rebecca was sitting on the living room sofa, aggressively tapping on her phone. Without the Wi-Fi, I assumed she was burning through her cellular data. She looked up, her expression morphing from annoyance to shock when she saw Helen. "What are you doing here?" Rebecca demanded, standing up abruptly. "Who is this? Good morning, Rebecca." I kept my voice perfectly even. "This is Helen. She's my real estate agent." Rebecca froze. "Real estate agent? For what?" "I'm selling the house," I answered calmly, walking past her into the kitchen. "You can't do that. We live here." Rebecca's voice pitched upward, completely abandoning her usual bossy tone. Panic was setting in. "I own this house, Rebecca. I am downsizing." I opened the pantry to check what dry goods I wanted to pack. "Helen is just here to take some preliminary measurements and photos. Please don't get in her way." Helen, ever the professional, completely ignored the tension and began pacing the living room, noting the dimensions on her clipboard. Rebecca frantically dialed David's number. "David, you need to come home right now. Your mother is here with a realtor. She's trying to kick us out." I didn't engage. I didn't argue. I walked upstairs to my bedroom and began packing the rest of my winter clothes into boxes I had brought in the trunk. Let her panic. Let her make frantic phone calls. The reality of her situation was finally crashing down around her, and she had absolutely no control over it. I smiled to myself as I taped up the first box. 30 minutes later, David rushed through the front door, his tie loosened and his face pale. I was standing in the foyer with Helen, discussing minor paint touch-ups. "Mom, what is going on?" David breathed heavily, looking wildly between me and Helen. "Rebecca called me crying. You're selling the house." "Yes, David." I handed Helen a spare key. "It's too much space for me. I want a smaller place." "But where are we supposed to go?" he pleaded, stepping closer. "We don't have enough saved for a down payment yet." "You know that." "What about the kids? You both make excellent salaries." I looked directly into his eyes, refusing to let him play the guilt card. "Without me paying your bills, you should have plenty to rent a very nice apartment. You have exactly 30 days to pack your things and leave." The house officially goes on the market January 2nd. Mom, please. It was just a glass of wine. Rebecca is sorry. She really is. Right. Rebecca. He turned to his wife, who was standing at the edge of the hallway, arms crossed tightly over her chest. She didn't look sorry. She looked cornered. 30 days. David, I repeated, picking up my purse. I expect the house to be completely empty of your belongings by the 30th of December. Leave the keys on the kitchen counter. I walked out the front door, leaving them standing in the foyer of a house they could no longer claim as their own. As I sat in the passenger seat of Helen's car, she glanced at me. You handled that beautifully, Marcia. I'm just taking out the trash. Helen, I fastened my seatbelt. Let's go find me a nice, quiet condo. For the first time in 2 years, my future felt entirely my own. The next 3 weeks passed in blissful silence. I stayed at Sarah's house, helping her bake holiday cookies and enjoying the lack of drama. I did not visit the big house. I didn't need to. Through Sarah, I heard bits and pieces of the chaos unfolding across town. Without my credit cards, the free internet, and the second car, David and Rebecca's lifestyle had collapsed. They had to cancel their Aspen ski trip to afford the deposit on a cramped 3-bedroom rental apartment on the other side of town. One afternoon, the doorbell rang at Sarah's house. I opened it to find Rebecca standing on the porch. She looked exhausted. Her hair pulled into a messy bun, holding a small potted plant. Marcia. She forced a tight, unnatural smile. Can we talk? I brought you this. I didn't open the screen door. I stood with my hands in my cardigan pockets. I'm really stressed with the move, Rebecca continued, her voice trembling slightly. The kids miss their rooms. If you just take the house off the market, we can go back to normal. We can set new rules. There is no going back to normal, Rebecca. I kept my tone flat and calm. You poured wine on me in front of my family because I wouldn't fund your vacation. You treated me like a servant in the home my husband built. I was just angry. People make mistakes, and people face consequences. I replied, focus on packing. Your 30 days are almost up. I closed the heavy wooden door, blocking out her protests. I didn't feel a shred of guilt. She wasn't sorry for her actions. She was only sorry she lost her ATM and her free maid. I carried the watering can into Sarah's living room to tend to the orchids. The countdown was almost over, and my new life was just beginning. December 30th arrived crisp and cold. I drove to the house at precisely 2 o'clock in the afternoon. A budget moving truck was backed into the driveway. I stood on the sidewalk, watching as David and a few of his friends carried heavy boxes out the front door. Rebecca was barking orders, carrying a single lamp, her face flushed with stress. When David saw me, his shoulders slumped. He walked over, wiping sweat from his forehead. We're almost done. Mom, he muttered, looking at his shoes. The cleaning lady you hired is already upstairs. Good. I nodded. Have a safe drive to your new apartment. David. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his house key, handing it to me. His hand hesitated for a fraction of a second, as if hoping I would push it back and tell him this was all a joke. I took the key and slipped it into my pocket. Goodbye. David. Rebecca marched past us, throwing a glare in my direction, but she didn't say a word. She climbed into the passenger seat of their remaining car and slammed the door. I waited on the porch until the moving truck and their car disappeared down the street. Then, I pulled a new set of deadbolts from my tote bag. I had scheduled a locksmith, but installing them myself gave me a profound sense of satisfaction. Within 20 minutes, the old locks were gone, and the new ones clicked securely into place. I walked through the empty, echoing living room. The heavy, oppressive energy they had brought into this space was completely gone. The house was just a building again, ready to be sold to a new family. I stood in the center of the kitchen, taking a deep breath of the quiet air. I had done it. I had taken my life back, without a single courtroom or screaming match. Exactly 1 year later, the smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon filled my new home. I had purchased a beautiful ground-floor condo with a small patio and a garden just 10 minutes away from Sarah. It was perfectly sized, easy to maintain, and entirely mine. The dining table was set for 6. Sarah, her husband, and 2 of my close friends from my book club were chatting happily in the living room, pouring glasses of Pinot Noir. The doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on my apron and opened it. David stood there with my 2 grandchildren. He looked older, tired, but there was a new sense of responsibility in his posture. Rebecca was nowhere to be seen. "Happy Thanksgiving, Mom." David smiled softly. "Happy Thanksgiving, sweethearts." I knelt down to hug the kids, handing them the small gift bags I had prepared. David and I had established a strict boundary. He could visit with the children on holidays for an hour in the morning. But Rebecca was not welcome in my home. He had accepted the terms without argument. Life in the apartment had forced him to finally grow up. After a brief, pleasant visit, David hugged me goodbye and led the kids back to his car. I closed the door and locked it my house, my rules. I walked back to my dining table and sat down among people who genuinely loved and respected me. Sarah handed me a glass of burgundy wine. I held it up to the light, admiring the rich red color. It didn't look like a stain or a weapon anymore. It just looked like a celebration. I took a slow, peaceful sip, smiled at my daughter, and enjoyed the beautiful, quiet life I had built for myself.